This is the 2024 Porsche 911 ST. It's the lightest, most powerful, and most driver-focused 911 Porsche has made in years. And if Porsche's marketing team has your contact information, they've sent you several messages telling you how amazing this car is and how you definitely need to buy one. The only problem is, long before the public even knew this car existed, Porsche had already pre-sold every single one of them to select customers. But that didn't stop their marketing department from desperately making you want to buy one. Now, for people who have been fans of Porsche for years, enticing people to buy a car that they have no intention of selling them wasn't a very Porsche thing to do. This was really more of a Ferrari thing to do. You see, for about as long as Porsche and Ferrari have coexisted, there have been two major cultural differences between the two brands. The first is that if you wanted to buy a new Ferrari, you had to have a special relationship with the owner of the dealership, you had to have a history of buying specific used vehicles from that dealership, and you had to pay additional markup fees on top of what you were already paying for your new Ferrari. But if you wanted to buy a new Porsche, you could just walk into the dealership and tell them what kind of car you wanted. Today, if you want to buy a high-performance or special edition 911, like a T, a GTS, a GT3, or the ST, you can't just walk into the dealership and order it. You have to have a special relationship with the owner of the dealership, you have to have a history of buying specific used vehicles from that dealership, and you have to pay additional markup fees on top of what you're already paying for your new 911. Oh, and real quick, if you're enjoying this video, or you just like learning about Porsches, click here to subscribe. The second cultural difference between Porsche and Ferrari is that Porsche owners were always bragging about how many miles their car had, where Ferrari owners were always bragging about how few miles their car had. But today, the majority of high-performance and special edition 911s are sold to investors who will lock the car away in storage until it's time to flip it to the next investor who will lock the car away in storage. The best example of this cultural change is the GT3 RS. When the first couple generations of the GT3 RS came out, their owners picked them up from the dealership and took them straight to the track. But today, if someone takes a new GT3 RS to the track, they're an absolute hero. So what exactly happened that caused Porsche to change its attitude towards its customers and its cars? Back in 1993, Porsche's sales had dropped to just 3,700 cars for all of North America, and the company was hemorrhaging money. This caused them to make radical changes to their lineup, and their first change was to start selling an entry-level car. In 1996, Porsche introduced the Boxster, and sales increased nearly 80% the following year. Over the next few years, sales remained fairly consistent, so in order to boost sales again, Porsche decided to start selling four-door cars, and in 2002, Porsche introduced their first ever SUV, the Cayenne, and sales increased nearly 50% in the following year. Then in 2009, Porsche introduced the Panamera, and sales increased 50% the following year, and in 2015, Porsche started selling the Macan, and just 1 year later, in 2016, Porsche sold nearly 1,500% more cars than they did back in 1993. But Porsche didn't stop there, and in 2019, they introduced the Taycan. By 2020, over 78% of Porsche's sales were four-door vehicles. Porsche was now making so much money from selling Macans, Cayennes, Panameras, and Taycans that they no longer needed to sell the 911 to be profitable. But then on September 29th of 2022, something even bigger happened. Porsche became a publicly traded company on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, making profitability more important than ever. And this is when Porsche got their next idea. The 911 has always been Porsche's halo car, but it's also been somewhat obtainable. Even a member of the working class who saved up and was smart with their money could own a brand new 911, but a brand new Ferrari was always out of the reach of the working class. And that's what made Porsche such a cool company. They made cars for people who love to drive, not for people who see cars as investments and social status placeholders. But today, that version of Porsche has been locked away, like a delivery mileage only 2016 911R. With the entry-level Boxster and Cayman being part of their lineup for years, and Porsche's worldwide annual sales in the hundreds of thousands, it was now time to reposition the 911 from being a high-performance luxury car to being an ultra-exclusive car. Porsche began introducing so many different special edition 911s that it became difficult to understand why they were special, and many were just part spin cars or even basic 911s with decals and a special badge. But Porsche had done such a good job of manipulating the 911 market that simply attaching the words special edition to even the most pedestrian of 911s would allow for huge price increases. But amongst the masses of not so special edition 911s, there are some that truly are special, like the 935-19, the GT3 RS Club Sport 25, and the 911 ST. But almost all of these cars have ended up in the hands of investors and will never be driven the way they were intended to. Now, I understand a manufacturer wanting to make exclusive limited edition vehicles, but Porsche's business model of making ultra high performance track cars and only selling them to investors who will never take them on a racetrack goes against everything Porsche stood for the first 70 years of their existence. If you want to make collectible cars and only sell them to investors, fine. But bragging about the lap times of your latest track car and only selling them to investors who will never take them on a racetrack is just counterintuitive and silly. What Porsche needs to do is make limited edition cars for investors who will never drive them. They can be made out of porcelain and painted in gold. And then produce high performance cars for people who love to drive, but produce them in volumes large enough so they can be sold to the people who will actually drive them. So that way, they'll have their limited edition cars for the people who will never drive them, and the high-performance cars for the people who will. So will this new Porsche that prioritizes exclusivity over customer satisfaction be the new normal, or will they return to the Porsche who makes great cars for everybody? Unfortunately, as long as Porsche remains a publicly traded company, exclusivity will be more important than customers. But fortunately, there is 70 years worth of lightweight, driver-focused 911s that you don't need special privilege or a special relationship to purchase. Thanks for checking out this video, and for more Porsche content that you cannot find anywhere else, click here to subscribe.